gold at $15,000, $20,000 an ounce, I will happily buy 10-year Treasury yields at 3%. I'll sell gold and buy 10-year because the dollars that I will be receiving in interest and holding in that bond will be properly valued relative to the amount of debt and what have you out there. That's how I think about that. And from the S&P standpoint, given that, everything's kind of a derivative of treasury markets, same kind of dynamic. I will happily sell gold by S&P when S&P is more appropriately valuing the dollar relative to gold, given the fiscal situation of the U.S. and the West more broadly.
The financial landscape is currently navigating an unprecedented tug-of-war between the preservation of currency value and the stabilization of sovereign debt. As global central banks quietly ramp up their gold allocations despite volatile price fluctuations, the underlying metrics point toward a systemic shift in the global reserve structure. Lukegromen, a macroeconomic strategist and founder of FFTT, LLC, posits that the current trajectory will force Western policymakers into an inescapable corner. He highlights that the global trading framework is undergoing a fundamental structural transformation, heavily accelerated by massive fiscal printing and shifting trade flows. Consequently, traditional reserve assets like U.S. Treasuries are actively losing ground to hard assets as global liquidity dynamics shift. This macro shift supports the striking prediction that gold could realistically skyrocket to $15,000 or even $20,000 per ounce, a valuation that would finally align the dollar with the massive expansion of sovereign debt obligations. Investors are increasingly forced to reevaluate their portfolios as fiat currencies face structural devaluation against scarce physical commodities. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to hit that like button, share it with fellow investors who follow gold and silver, and subscribe so you don't miss the next big update.
Yeah, I think gold warned us ahead of time on some level. In sort of the run up ahead. Tactically, the technicians that I watch and respect saying you could have gold pull back into the high threes and everything still be totally fine, even in the mid threes, 3,500, something like that, and still be totally fine from a longer term perspective. Personally, I'd be surprised if it got that low. But I'd be buying a lot more if I woke up one day and found it there, given sort of the outlook for global sovereign debt and what's happening. So I think we're getting some of this, it's been interesting to me. Article just came out last week. Global central banks bought more gold last month than they have, I think in several quarters. So on net, global central bank buying is really, really strong, and yet the price fell. Well, I think you're having some selling throughout the developed world. GCC nations are big gold holders, and so there's probably some selling there. And so I think you're in kind of a no man's land right now of just waiting for the same dynamic that I was talking about before, which is this war is going to force us to either force Western policymakers to save the currency or save the bond market. And, stocks are trading like they're going to save the bond market. Bitcoin's a little bit trading like they're going to save the bond market. Bond market's trading like they're going to save the currency. And gold's a little bit trading like they're going to save the currency. And I think it's really just an order of operations. I think there's zero chance they're going to save the currencies. I think they're going to print as much as they need. And that's really good for the real value of, it's good for stocks, it's good for Bitcoin, it's good for gold. It's bad for bonds on real basis. I think they'll basically be capping yields to do that. But until that decision is really made, then gold is it's kind of in the same, I think it's going to continue to kind of be in this sort of, no man's land until it goes ultimately, in my opinion, much higher. I think later this year, when it becomes clear that the only answer is save the bond market and throw the currency under the bus. When we just take a step back from, hey, are we in are they going to save the currency or the bond? We know what they're going to save, right? They're going to save the bond market and throw the currency under the bus. So to me, the only way out of this is severe financial repression, much higher gold price. And I think ultimately we're in one of these cycles that we've seen several of. We saw it in the 30s, we saw it in the 70s, we saw it in the 2000s a little bit. Less than in the 70s, but where you get 10, 12 years where gold just really outperformed. And the reason I think that is ultimately not only do we need to devalue the debt, but when we talk about when we look at what the Trump administration is doing, Defense Production Act for petroleum and infrastructure, you're basically printing money to reshore. That is a fundamental change of flows of the global trading system. That means you cannot use U.S. Treasury bonds as your primary reserve asset going forward. You have to use something else. And the only other thing that is big enough to run the deficits is gold. So people always ask, well, what's going to run the deficits if America's not running the deficits? And I point them to, it's not even speculative, it's a fact. Gold's going to run the deficits. Gold is running the deficits. We can see this. Gold's share of global FX reserve is now bigger than the U.S. Treasury bond. And these, critics will say, oh, it's all just gold price. I say, exactly. That's the point. The same person that says, well, it's just gold's price. It's not gold tons. Like, do these people count their 401k in number of shares they hold? No, of course they don't. They count it in what the money they put in and what's the S&P done. That's how they count it. But for some reason, some people go, oh, well, it's just all because of gold's price. No, exactly right. Gold's price is going to go up, run the deficits basically become big enough to be the reserve asset as the U.S. reshores. That's a really good outcome for America. That's a really good outcome for the world. Let's see if we can continue on the path. Maybe this whole Iran thing is just political cover for it. I don't know. I tend to not give them that much credit in terms of trying to plan the unplannable, but it'd probably be scaling. Gold's an overweight for me, and has been for a long, long time, a significant overweight. And so, yeah, I would be scaling some in at probably 0.3, probably at, a lot at 0.2, just because I'd be surprised if it actually got to 0.1. But I would never sell all my gold just because what did Ray Dalio say? If you don't own gold, you know neither money nor history, or you don't understand economics or history. And I think that's right. Is ultimately, for me, it's all about what's the price of things, in gold. And to a certain extent in Bitcoin, if it ever, as volatility in Bitcoin comes down over time, you can have that same discussion about Bitcoin. People have asked me the same about treasury bonds. What yield would you buy 10-year treasury bond? For me, it has nothing to do with the yield. The U.S. government can't afford over 4.8%. So it's like how many whatever can you stand on? How many camels can you stand on the eye of or on the head of a pin or whatever? Right? How many angels on the head of a pin? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's a silly discussion. Now, what's a good discussion, in my opinion, is at what price of the dollar would I buy 10-year treasuries? And look. Gold at $15,000, $20,000 an ounce, I will happily buy 10-year treasury yields at 3%. I'll sell gold and buy 10-year because the dollars that I will be receiving in interest and holding in that bond will be properly valued relative to the amount of debt and what have you out there. That's how I think about that. And from the S&P standpoint, given that everything's kind of a derivative of treasury markets. Same kind of dynamic. I will happily sell gold by S&P when S&P is more appropriately valuing the dollar relative to gold, given the fiscal situation of the U.S. and the West more broadly.
The historical playbook for resolving extreme sovereign debt levels offers very few paths forward outside of aggressive monetary intervention. Looking back across the last 2 centuries, almost every nation that allowed its debt to GDP ratio to breach the 120% threshold ultimately faced a severe debt crisis, typically resolved through rampant inflation and strict financial repression. The ongoing inflation cycle is not merely a temporary supply chain disruption, but rather a direct manifestation of a deeply structural debt problem that has been building for years. Western policymakers will inevitably choose to save the bond market by throwing the currency under the bus, as capping soaring yields becomes the only viable mechanism to prevent a total market unwind. This financial environment ensures that while fiat currencies rapidly lose purchasing power, hard assets and equities will see substantial upside in real terms. Now let's get back to the interview.
When you look at the debt, dynamics that the United States is in and went into this war in. There have basically been, you can go back in history, there have been no countries going back 150 years that have had debt to GDP hit 130%, 125% like we did during COVID, and not have a debt crisis of sorts. A severe inflation usually is how it's worked out with severe financial repression. There was one example really in the last 200 years that I'm aware of where a country was able to do that. And it was Great Britain after the Napoleonic Wars, I want to say like 1815. And so they had the reserve currency, gold backed, and they were able to not have to devalue their currency to get out of their debt issue. How did they do it? They cut government spending drastically. They had some of it probably by luck of the draw. You were at the very beginning of the industrial boom, right? Industrialization, etc., for the next 100 years. But then you steam engines, and then you get into commercialization of fossil fuels, etc. And by virtue of growth, cutting government spending, and avoiding, they didn't go back to war in any real way. They were able to get out of it. And you contrast that with what Trump just did, which is, okay, we have a debt problem. We had a debt problem. We had an inflation problem that, yes, it was an inflation problem under Biden, and it was ultimately an inflation problem that was a manifestation of a debt problem. Because part of the reason we ran the additional stimulus is we absolutely didn't need on the surface in 21. We didn't need the second and third rounds of stimmies, but if you go back to August of 2019, there was a BlackRock white paper called it's like Navigating the Next Crisis, wrote about it at the time. But at any rate, the point was it was three former central bankers, including Stan Fisher, former vice chair of the United States. And the gist of it was, look, in the next crisis, we're out of firepower. And so what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to do a lot of fiscal spending, and central banks are going to have to monetize that fiscal spending to keep interest rates well below the rate of inflation to grow out of the debt to set us up. And so the Biden inflation that Trump criticized that you were noting was really, in my opinion, a policy response that was laid out in 2019, which was, hey, in the next crisis, we're going to spend a bunch of fiscal, and we're going to have inflation, and we're going to keep bond yields low, and we are going to grow our way out of it. We're going to inflate our way out of it. And that's what I think 2021 was about. You get to 2022, of course, it starts to become a political issue. And to your point, like now, gasoline prices where I'm sitting in Ohio, they're higher than they were in 2022. I just saw $5.99 diesel in Cleveland, Ohio, last night. That's going to filter through to all sorts of supply chains, and it's higher than it was under Biden. And incredibly, we haven't even gotten to the really painful part of this yet. So, like, you've got inflation baked in the cake across necessities that is going to be very meaningful for the next 6 to 12 months. And it sets up a real interesting dynamic of, are we going to save the currency, right? Are we going to essentially let bond yields go to where they need to go? Is the Fed going to hike rates to defend the currency? Or are they going to cut rates into accelerating inflation and really let the currency go and let inflation go? And we're in this interesting moment in time right now where the stock market and even Bitcoin a little bit seem to be thinking over the last 3 to 4 weeks that they're going to let the currency go. And the bond market, with the 30-year, breaking 5, the 10-year back to its over 4.4%, which has been a problem area that we've seen various jawboning, tacos, etc. since this war started. The bond market's saying, no, we're going to defend the currency. They're going to save the bond market, not the currency. They're going to let everything just come unwound and let rates go as high as they need to go to stop the inflation. And only one of those two could be right.
The macro environment highlights a stark divergence between how different asset classes are reacting to the looming choices of central bankers. While equity markets and digital assets are actively trading under the assumption that liquidity will remain highly expansionary, the bond market continues to project a strict defense of fiat purchasing power. This dislocation cannot persist indefinitely, and the structural realities of defense spending and industrial reshoring mean that gold is systematically stepping in to run the deficits. A multi-year cycle of dramatic outperformance for physical reserves is unfolding, mirroring the great inflationary cycles of the 1930s and 1970s. As it becomes completely clear later this year that printing money is the only operational choice left to sustain the sovereign debt architecture, the global economic landscape will experience a massive repricing. This systemic shift signals a profound transformation in how wealth is preserved globally as market forces override central bank narratives to revalue tangible reserves. If this gave you value, smash that like button, share it with those paying attention, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay alert, stay prepared, and keep stacking tangible assets.